She poured boiling water on a helpless old woman, laughed, filmed it, and posted it for clout. The video got 2 million views overnight. People called her brave. People called her funny. Nobody, not one soul, warned her what that old woman truly was. Before the week ended, Adaeze would beg on her knees in the dirt, and the whole village would watch in silence. Subscribe now, because this story gets darker, stranger, and more beautiful with every episode. The sun was barely awake when Adaeze Okonkwo pressed record. The market square of Umyoha village was already buzzing, traders arranging yams, women balancing baskets on their heads, children chasing chickens through red dust. And there, in the far corner near the old mango tree, Mama Ngozi sat exactly where she always sat, rocking, muttering, her wild white hair catching the morning light like smoke. Chisholm, zoom in. Zoom in on her, Adaeze whispered, her red nails tapping the phone screen. Ada, I don't know about this one, Chisholm muttered, auburn bob shaking slightly as she raised the ring light. This woman she gives me a feeling. She gives everyone a feeling. That's why it's going to go viral. Adaeze adjusted her gold chains, smiled into the front camera, and flipped to rear. My people, good morning. Today we are serving content. She had 340,000 subscribers. She needed more. She always needed more. Adaeze had borrowed the kettle of hot water from Mama Afani's stall. She told the woman it was for tea. As she walked toward Mama Ngozi, the cowrie shells on the old woman's neck began to rattle, though there was no wind. Mama Ngozi's milky eyes lifted slowly. And for one fraction of a second, just one, she looked directly at Adaeze. Not through her. Not past her. Directly at her. Like she had been expecting her. Adaeze faltered. Her step missed the ground by a half beat. Keep recording, she breathed to Chisholm. She raised the kettle. The steam coiled upward like a living thing. The crowd nearby was watching now, some horrified, some already pulling out their own phones. A child ran. A trader called out. Don't. Adaeze poured. The scream that came from Mama Ngozi was not the scream of pain. It was something older. Something that sat behind the teeth and hummed in the chest. The old woman's white hair flew back. Her mouth opened wide. And from deep inside that throat, instead of agony, came laughter. Low, rolling, knowing laughter. Adaeze stumbled backward, heart slamming. And in the sudden, terrible silence that followed, Mama Ngozi raised one gnarled finger directly at Adaeze and whispered 7 words, clear as river water, sane as sunrise. What you took from me comes back. Then she collapsed onto the dirt and went still. The video was posted by 7 a.m. By noon, it had 800,000 views. By midnight, 2 million. Adaeze was laughing at the comments when the knocking started. Not on the door, on the walls. All 4 walls of her room simultaneously. 3 slow knocks. Then silence. Then 3 more. Chisholm, sleeping on the floor beside her, sat up. Ada, what is that? Adaeze opened her mouth to answer, and every single light in the building went out. In the darkness, her phone lit up on its own. The screen showed the video. Playing. But it was different now. In this version of the video, Adaeze was not the one holding the kettle. She was the one on the ground. The video on her screen showed something that was never filmed. Adaeze, on her knees in the dirt, someone pouring something over her. And the face of the person holding the vessel was wearing her own smile. Adaeze did not sleep. She lay rigid on the thin mattress, eyes fixed on the ceiling, on the handprint cracked into the plaster which was gone now. She told herself. Just shadows. Just her imagination running away from guilt she hadn't yet admitted she felt. Chisholm had finally drifted off beside her, her chest rising and falling in short, nervous intervals even in sleep. The candle had burned to a stub. Outside, Umyoha was completely silent in a way villages should never be, not even the crickets. Not even the dogs. At exactly 2:07 a.m. Adaeze would check the time later. Over and over she felt it. Wait. At the foot of the mattress. Slow. Deliberate. The weight of someone sitting down. Adaeze's body turned to stone. She could not move a single finger. She could not call out. Her eyes, the only part of her that still obeyed, traveled downward with agonizing slowness toward the foot of the bed. Mama Ngozi sat there. Perfectly still. Perfectly upright. Her wild silver-white hair was dry. Her tattered indigo wrapper was dry. Her milky amber-ringed eyes were open, looking at nothing or at everything in the middle distance. The cowrie shells around her neck were absolutely still, not one rattle. Her gnarled hands rested in her lap, folded with a dignity that did not belong to madness. She was not wet. She was not burned. She was simply there. And she smelled of something Adaeze could not name: old rain, fresh cassava, something smoky and ancient, like the inside of a place of worship that had stood for 200 years. Adaeze found her voice. It came out as barely a sound. Mama, Ngozi. The old woman's amber-ringed eyes moved slow, deliberate, and settled on Adaeze's face. And in that moment, looking into those eyes, Adaeze understood with a clarity that was almost physical. This woman had never been mad. Not once. Not for a single day. Mama Ngozi tilted her head. When she spoke, her voice was low, precise, and unhurried like water finding its level. You have your father's eyes, she said. I knew him when they still had light in them. Before he made his choice. Adaeze's blood went cold. My father? What do you know about Your father took something from this village, Mama Ngozi said quietly, as if discussing weather. Something that did not belong to him. He was given 7 years to return it. He never did. The dead aged. And debts, my daughter, they find the children when the parents run. Adaeze sat up slowly, heart hammering. I am not your daughter. And I don't know what you're talking about. Mama Ngozi smiled, and it was the most frightening smile Adaeze had ever seen, because it was entirely kind. You will, she said. You have 7 days. Every day, one thing you love will become unreachable. Not destroyed. Unreachable. Until you find what was taken and bring it home. She stood, and the mattress made no sound, released no weight, as if she had never been sitting on it at all. 7 days, Adaeze. Starting now. She walked toward the wall, and did not stop at it. The candle stub went out. In the ringing silence that followed, Chisholm's voice came from the darkness beside her, thin and terrified. Ada, I heard every word she said. I was not sleeping. I have been awake since she sat down. A long silence. Chisholm. Yes. I need to call my father. She reached for her phone. The screen lit up and showed her that his number, which had been saved in her contacts for 22 years, was simply gone. Not blocked. Not deleted. Gone, as if it had never been entered. As if Chief Bartholomew Okonkwo had never existed in her phone's memory. Day 1 had already begun. When Adaeze ran to Emeka's door at dawn, the only person she trusted enough to tell he opened it before she knocked. He was already dressed, already holding 3 cowrie shells in his closed fist. And the first words out of his mouth were not what happened, or are you okay? They were, I know. I've been waiting for you to come. Your father, and I need to tell you the same truth, and one of us has been lying to you about it your whole life. Emeka did not open the box immediately. He pulled out the chair at the small table, the one closest to Adaeze, and he sat. Not at the head. At the side, like a man who understood this was not his story to lead. Adaeze sat across from him. Chisholm took the chair farthest from the box, as if distance offered protection. The candle on the table burned between them. The 4th cowrie shell, larger, older, ringed in a faint copper stain, rested on its folded cloth like an exhibit in a trial. Emeka. Adaeze's voice was measured, controlled in the way of people who are barely controlling anything. Start talking. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at the box. Then back at her, and she saw it. The scar above his left eyebrow catching the candlelight, that faint white ridge that she had always assumed was from a childhood fall. She had never asked. He had never explained. Small secrets hiding in plain sight for years. I was 12, he said. The night your father came to the mango tree. He told her everything slowly, the way you remove a splinter carefully, because the pain of careless speed is worse than the thing itself. 20 years ago, Chief Bartholomew Okonkwo had been the village's most powerful elder, respected, wealthy by local measure, beloved. And Mama Ngozi had been the village's keeper. Not a mad woman. A keeper. The one who held the village's covenant object, a carved vessel, ancient, passed from generation to generation, containing the first water drawn from the village's founding well. The well that had since dried. The vessel that was the only proof Umuoa had of its own beginning. Chief Okonkwo had borrowed it. For a ceremony, he said. For 3 days, he said. He never returned it. Why? Adaeze's voice came out smaller than she intended. He sold it, Emeka said quietly, to an antique dealer in the city. For money he needed to start the business that built the house you grew up in. The money that paid for your school fees. The money that made him chief. He paused. Everything you have ever been given came from that sale. The silence that followed was the loudest thing in the room. Chisholm made a small sound. Adaeze did not. And you, she started. I saw him, Emeka said. I was 12. I was hiding near the tree. I watched him take it from Mama Ngozi's keeping place. She trusted him. She was sleeping. His jaw tightened. I told no one because I was a child and he was the chief, and I was afraid. And every year after that I told myself I would tell you when the time was right. And every year you looked so happy, and he stopped. The copper bracelet on his wrist caught the light. I was a coward. I am sorry. Adaeze stared at him. Her red nails were flat on the table, perfectly still. Her box braids had fallen forward over one shoulder. Her gold chains lay against her collarbone. The box, she said. What is in the box? Emeka reached for it. He opened it. Inside, a folded piece of paper with an address in Lagos. A photograph old, slightly burned at one edge of a vessel. Clay. Ancient. Small enough to hold in both hands. Etched with the same patterns as Mama Ngozi's wrapper and the same patterns as Emeka's copper bracelet. The founding vessel of Umuoha. And beneath the photograph, a receipt. From the antique dealer. Dated 20 years ago. Signed in Chief Bartholomew Okonkwo's hand. Adaeze picked up the receipt. She read her father's signature. Then she set it down very carefully, pushed back her chair very calmly, walked to Emeka's small kitchen, and stood over the sink with her hands gripping the edge. Chisholm appeared in the doorway, silent. After a long moment Adaeze straightened, turned around, and her eyes were dry and her voice was iron. How much does a 20-year-old stolen artifact cost to buy back? Emeka appeared in the doorway behind Chisholm. Ada. How much, Emeka? He told her the figure the antique dealer had quoted him because he had already called. Of course he had. He had been preparing for this morning for longer than she knew. The number was not possible. It was the kind of money that required months. Or a miracle. Or a viral video with 2 million views and a sponsorship she had been offered that very morning, a notification she had ignored in the chaos of the night from a brand paying more than she had ever been offered before. Adaeze's phone buzzed on the table. She walked back and looked at the screen. The sponsorship offer was gone. The notification had been there 40 minutes ago. Now the email did not exist. Her inbox showed no record of it. Day one's second consequence. The money she needed, disappearing before she could reach it. And then her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. The voice on the other end was old. Male. Shaking slightly. And it said 4 words she had not heard in 3 years. Ada. It is me. Her father. Calling from a number that did not exist in her contacts because Mama Ngozi had only erased the saved entry, not the man himself. Papa, she whispered. I know, he said. I know what has begun. I have been waiting for this call for 20 years. I did not think it would come through you. His voice broke on the last word. I am so sorry, my daughter. I am so sorry. And from behind her, Emeka, who could hear the voice through the phone, slowly closed his eyes and exhaled. The long breath of a secret finally released. But Chisholm, standing at the window, had gone completely still. Ada, she said, her voice barely a thread. There is a woman standing outside. Adaeze turned. In the growing morning light, at the edge of Emeka's compound, not walking, not moving, simply standing, was a girl, perhaps 16, in a white dress, with silver white hair, and milky white eyes. She was not Mama Ngozi, but she wore the same cowrie shells. Mama Ngozi was the keeper, but she was never the only one. The girl in white at the gate turned her milky eyes directly toward Adaeze's phone, still pressed to her ear, her father's voice still on the line, and spoke 4 words that carried across the compound with impossible clarity. Tell him to come. On the phone, Chief Okonkwo's breath stopped. Then Ada. She found a successor. That means the covenant is ending. If we do not return the vessel before day 7, the village well will never flow again. And that is only the beginning of what we lose. The bus to Lagos left Umuoha at 6 a.m. and smelled of fried plantain, engine oil, and other people's prayers. Adaeze sat at the window. Chisholm had taken the seat directly behind them and had been either asleep or pretending to be wary. Her orange earbuds were in. Her eyes were closed. Either way, she was giving them space, which told Adaeze that Chisholm understood more about the situation between her and Emeka than Adaeze had ever directly said aloud. Outside, the landscape shifting from the deep green and red earth of their village into the sprawling, indifferent expansion of highway Nigeria. Fuel stations, billboards, buses older than the drivers. The world continuing at its usual speed, unbothered by covenants or cursed days or stolen clay vessels. Adaeze had her phone out. She was reviewing the antique dealer's address from the folded paper street in Lagos Island, an area she knew from content research but had never visited. She had also, in the hours between Emeka's house and the bus station, done 3 things she had not told Emeka about. She had posted a new video. Not the Mama Ngozi video, that one she had taken down the moment the sun rose, with hands that barely shook. This was a different video, filmed in Emeka's compound before they left, facing the camera with no performance in her eyes for the first time in her content career. She had spoken directly, quietly. She said she had done something wrong, but she said, "I hurt someone for views. I thought it was funny. It was not funny. I am going to fix it. I will tell you how, when I have." No hook, no music, no ring light. 2 minutes and 11 seconds of a young woman telling the truth with her braids still messy from the night. By the time they reached the outskirts of Lagos, it had 600,000 views. The comments were not what she expected. People were not mocking her. They were watching and waiting, and something in the video's honesty had touched a place in strangers that her most polished content never had. Then she looked back out the window at Lagos approaching in its massive, roaring, sun-drenched chaos. "Ask me again," she said quietly, "when this is over." It was not a no. They both knew it was not a no. Emeka exhaled slowly. His shoulder stayed against hers. The bus descended into Lagos. The antique dealer's shop on Lagos Island was called Okafor Heritage Arts, a narrow, air-conditioned room between a phone repair stall and a fabric cellar, packed floor to ceiling with masks, bronze figurines, old coins, carved doors. Mr. Okafor himself was a thin man in his 60s with reading glasses and the careful manner of someone who had spent decades handling other people's histories. Adaeze put the photograph on his glass counter. "This vessel, you bought it 20 years ago from a man named Okonkwo. Where is it now?" Mr. Okafor looked at the photograph for a long time. Then he looked at Adaeze. Then at Emeka. Something moved across his face, recognition, or its cousin. "I sold it," he said carefully, 8 years ago. Adaeze's jaw tightened. "To whom?" "A private collector. A woman. She was very specific about what she wanted." He paused. "She paid 3 times my asking price. She said the piece had family significance." "Her name," Adaeze said. Mr. Okafor wrote it on a card and slid it across the counter. Adaeze picked it up. "Read it." Her face changed. Emeka leaned over. "Read it." His copper bracelet clicked against the glass counter as he gripped it. Behind them, Chisholm, who had been pretending to examine a bronze figurine, came to look. She read the name. She looked up. "Ada," she said slowly. "Is that not?" "Yes," Adaeze said. The name on the card was Dr. Ngozi Okonkwo-Adibe, her father's sister, her aunt. A woman Adaeze had been told, since childhood, was dead. She was not dead. She had been in Lagos for 8 years. With the vessel, waiting. And at the precise moment Adaeze's mind was processing this, her phone buzzed. She looked down. Her YouTube channel was gone. Not suspended. Not demonetized. Gone as if the account had never existed. 340,000 subscribers. Every video. Every comment. Every piece of content she had built her identity around for 4 years. Erased. Day 3 had begun, and it had taken the one thing she had built entirely by herself. Her aunt, the dead woman who was not dead, picked up the phone on the second ring. Her voice was composed, educated, unsurprised. She said, "I have been expecting this call for 8 years, Adaeze. I bought the vessel back myself because your father would not. I have kept it safe, but I will not simply hand it over." A pause that filled with 20 years of family silence. "You must come to me, and you must bring your father, because what needs to happen next he must do himself, in person, before the keeper." Chief Bartholomew Okonkwo opened the door before she knocked. He was older than she remembered. 3 years since she had last seen him, and those 3 years had done their work thoroughly. The once powerful broad shoulders had softened. His hair was entirely gray now, trimmed close, and the deep lines in his dark face had multiplied. He wore a plain white singlet and dark trousers, no abata, no chief's regalia, no performance of status. Just a tired man in his home clothes, standing in a doorway. He stepped back from the door. She entered. Emeka and Chisholm waited in the corridor without being asked. The apartment was modest and clean. A sitting room with worn but good furniture. A bookshelf. Family photographs on one wall, and she noticed, with a cold precision, that every photograph that included her mother ended at a certain year. Your mother was sick, he said, before you were born, before we were married. Mama Ngozi trusted me with the vessel for a ceremony. 3 days. I held it, and I thought, this is old. This is clay. The village does not know its value in the market. The dealer offered me enough to save your mother and build a future. He looked at his hands. I told myself it was temporary, that I would earn the money and buy it back quietly. In 3 years. In 5. In 10. A long pause. 20 years pass faster than you believe they will when you are standing at their beginning. Adaeze was very still. And my aunt, your sister Ngozi, she is alive. His jaw shifted. She found out 8 years ago. She did not speak to me. She simply found the vessel, bought it, and told me she would keep it until I was ready to do what was right. She has been waiting. He closed his eyes briefly. She has more patience than I deserve. She has more patience than you deserved, Adaeze said quietly. There is a difference. He looked at her, but she held out her hand, and he took it, and they shook like two people who had just signed a document that would cost them both something and free them both of something else. They met Dr. Ngozi Okonkwo-Adibe the following morning. She was 61, tall, naturally silver-haired, and wore a deep blue Ankara print dress with gold earrings. She had her brother's jaw and her own eyes clear, direct, a little amused at everything. She opened her apartment door and looked at Adaeze for a long moment before saying, "You have your grandmother's face. I have been waiting to tell you that." She had the vessel in a locked glass cabinet in her study wrapped in cloth, placed on a carved wooden stand, treated with the reverence of something that deserved it. When she uncovered it, the room seemed to hold its breath. The clay vessel, small, ancient, etched with those interlocking patterns, a thin residue of something mineral and old along the inner rim, the last trace of the founding water it had carried for a century before it was taken. "I will give it to you," Ngozi said, looking at her brother. "But not here, not in Lagos. It goes home with you, and you carry it yourself, Bartholomew, on your lap, all the way back to Umuoha, and you walk it to the keeper yourself." She looked at him steadily. "Can you do that?" "Yes," he said. He looked like a man who was telling the complete truth. It was on the drive back through Lagos toward the bus terminal, the vessel carefully wrapped, and riding on the chief's lap in the back seat of Ngozi's car, Adaeze beside him, Emeka and Chisholm in the front. That day 4 arrived. Emeka's phone rang. He looked at the screen. His face changed in a way that Adaeze, watching from the back seat, had never seen on him before, a specific quality of stillness that was not composure, but shock absorbing itself before it could become visible. He answered, listened, said 3 words, "I am coming." He ended the call and sat without moving for a moment. Then he turned to look at Adaeze over the headrest. His deep-set eyes. "The school," he said. "The building where I teach. There was a fire this morning. No one was hurt." In the back seat, Chief Okonkwo held the wrapped vessel on his lap and closed his eyes and said nothing. Because there was nothing a man in his position could say that would not make the weight heavier for the people around him. 3 days left, and the covenant growing more expensive with each sunrise. They arrived back in Umuoha at midnight on day 5 to find the village well had already begun to change. The water that morning had come up gray. The village elders were gathered at the mango tree in silence. And standing at the center of the gathering, beside the girl in white, was Mama Ngozi upright, present, a second vessel, identical to the first, cracked cleanly down the middle. She looked directly at Chief Okonkwo as they approached and said, "You have 2 days. And the crack grows 1 inch for every hour you delay. When it breaks completely, no return is possible. For anything." The ceremony was supposed to begin at sunrise. It had been arranged by the village elders in the hours after midnight, a public return of the stolen vessel, witnessed by all of Umuoha, with Chief Okonkwo speaking his confession aloud before the keeper. Simple, old, irreversible. Adaeze had stood at the edge of the preparations, watching the elders arrange the space around the mango tree, and felt something unfamiliar moving through her chest, not excitement, not dread, but a deep, quiet readiness. The kind that comes when you have been running and have finally turned around to face what you were running from. Chisholm appeared at her elbow with 2 cups of hot tea from somewhere. "Ready?" she asked. "No," Adaeze said. She took the tea. "Let's go." The village assembled at sunrise. All of Umuoha elders, children, market women, young men. the traitor whose basket had fallen during the original incident, the child who had run. They came in the particular silence of people who understand that something real is happening and have chosen to be present for it. Mama Ngozi stood at the base of the mango tree with the cracked vessel in her hands. In the morning light, the crack was visibly wider than the night before it had grown through the dark hours, silent and patient, an inch at a time. Chief Okonkwo walked forward carrying the real vessel. He wore his traditional agbada deep burgundy, the one of ceremony and consequence. He had dressed for what this was. He stood before Mama Ngozi and before the village, and he opened his mouth to begin the confession that would start the return. And then everything went wrong. The crack in the vessel in Mama Ngozi's hands split wider suddenly, jaggedly a sound like dry wood snapping in a fire. The assembled crowd gasped. The crack had jumped not 1 inch, but 3, in a single second, reaching from the midsection of the vessel toward its lip. Mama Ngozi's expression did not change. But the girl in white beside her made a sound low, involuntary, and reached for the keeper's arm. "Why is it accelerating?" Emeka said quietly beside Adaeze, his copper bracelet cold in the morning air. "Because the confession alone is not enough," said a voice behind them. They turned. Dr. Ngozi Okonkwo-Adibe stood several paces back, silver hair catching the light, her hands folded. Her expression, the controlled sadness of someone delivering information they have known for some time, but waited for the right moment to release. "The covenant requires 3 things," she said quietly, to Adaeze specifically. "The return of the vessel, the public confession of the one who took it," and she paused. "An act of genuine sacrifice from the bloodline. Not money, not words. Something given freely that cannot be taken back." Adaeze stared at her. "What kind of sacrifice?" "That is between you and the keeper," Ngozi said. "It cannot be prescribed. If it is prescribed, it is not sacrifice. It is payment. They are different things." The crack snapped again. Another half-inch. The crowd murmured. An elder woman covered her mouth. Adaeze turned back to the tree, to Mama Ngozi, to the cracking vessel in her ancient hands. She thought about what she had that she could give freely that could not be taken back. Not her phone. Not her following, which was already gone. And gone things cannot be sacrificed. She thought about the apology video. Still up on the backup account. Still climbing. 1.4 million views, now the most honest thing she had ever made. The thing that had started to show her who she was when she stopped performing. She thought about the sponsorship offers that had come in overnight to her email, real ones, from brands that had seen the apology video and wanted exactly that version of her. Enough money to fund the kind of content she actually wanted to make. The beginning of the career she could have been building all along, if she had not been so busy building the wrong one. She thought about what Mama Ngozi had said on the first night. "What you took from me comes back." She understood now. It was not a curse. It was a description of a law. What you take comes back to be returned. What you give freely, that is what breaks the cycle. She walked forward, past Emeka, who caught her arm, Ada, and she held his hand for one brief second, looked at him, and said, "I know what I'm doing." She walked to Mama Ngozi. The crowd was silent. The keeper's milky amber-ringed eyes met hers. Up close, in daylight, those eyes were extraordinary, old beyond any single lifetime, patient beyond any single grievance. "I know what I took," Adaeze said quietly. Her voice carried in the silence. "I took your dignity. In front of people. For entertainment. I recorded your pain and called it content, and I profited from it." She swallowed. "I cannot give that back. It is already done. So I am giving you the thing it built instead." She held up her phone. On the screen, her backup account. The apology video. 1.4 million views. The comments full of people who had found something real in her honesty. The sponsorship offers waiting in her inbox. The beginning of everything she had been working towards since she was 17 years old, with a phone and a dream and a hunger she had never properly named. She deleted the account. Not deactivated. Deleted. Permanently. For seconds. Gone. The crowd made a sound. Chisholm made a sound. Emeka was completely still. Adaeze lowered the phone. Her hands were not shaking. "I don't know if that is enough," she said to Mama Ngozi. "But it is mine. It was genuinely mine. And I am giving it freely." Mama Ngozi looked at her for a long moment. Those ancient eyes. The carousel still. The cracked vessel in her hands. And then, slowly, the sound of the crack's progress stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Mama Ngozi did something no one in Umuoha had ever seen her do. She smiled fully, openly, the smile of a woman who has been waiting a long time for a specific kind of courage and has finally seen it. She reached out and placed one gnarled hand on Adaeze's face. Gently, the touch of a grandmother. That, she said softly, is enough. And the crack in the vessel in her hands stopped spreading. Held. Frozen at 2/3, a millimeter from disaster. But not healed. Not yet. Because Chief Okonkwo still had to speak. He stepped forward, and as he began the words of his public confession, voice breaking only once, in the middle of the sentence containing his wife's name, the crack began, infinitely slowly, to close. The crowd watched. The elders watched. The children watched. Chisholm was crying openly. Emeka stood with his hands at his sides, and his jaw working at something that was not quite composure, but was trying to be. The real vessel was placed in Mama Ngozi's hands beside the cracked twin. The keeper held both, one whole, one cracked, but closing, and raised her face to the morning sky, and spoke in a language older than any of them knew, her voice steady and clear and entirely sane. The cowrie shells on her neck began to rattle. Gently, not ominously the way wind chimes sound when the weather is changing towards something better. And from the direction of the village well, an elder woman's voice called out high and sharp and astonished. The water. Come and see the water. The crack in the twin vessel was nearly closed. Not fully. One thin line remained a scar, not a fracture. There was still one day left. And one thing still undone. Emeka found her sitting alone at the base of the mango tree after the crowd dispersed. He sat beside her without asking. For a long time neither spoke. Then he said, "The school board called. They are rebuilding. I will have my classroom back in 3 months." He paused. "And you deleted everything?" "Not a question." "Yes," she said. He looked at her for a long time. "Ada, it is over. Everything is almost healed." Another pause. His copper bracelet. His steady eyes. "So I am asking again." She looked at him. This man who had witnessed her worst moment and stayed, who had confessed his own failures before asking her to face hers, who had loved her quietly and faithfully for 6 years without making it her burden. She opened her mouth, and from the well across the square, the elder woman called again, but this time, her voice was not astonished. It was joyful. The water was running clear. And Adaeze smiled, the first real smile of the series, and said one word. But Day 7 had one final demand waiting that none of them had seen coming. Day 7 arrived without drama. No knocking on walls. No phone turning itself on. No cowrie shells appearing where there had been none. Just the ordinary dawn light of Umuoha rose in amber through the curtain of Adaeze's room, and the sound of the village waking to its morning routines, slightly louder, slightly more present than it had been in days. As if the village itself had been holding its breath and was beginning, cautiously, to release it. Adaeze sat up. The ceiling above her was smooth, no cracks, no handprints, no marks. Just old concrete catching the morning light. Her phone was on the floor beside her. She picked it up. Her YouTube channel was still gone. The backup account was still deleted. The sponsorship emails had not returned. She scrolled through her contacts. Her father's number was still absent from the saved entries. She got dressed. Black crop top, denim shorts, gold chains, white sneakers. She was still herself. The uniform of herself. But the person inside it had reorganized. She went to the mango tree. Mama Ngozi was there. Of course she was. Seated at the base of the tree as she always sat, but upright, awake, the 2 vessels in her lap. The real one whole. The twin, with its one remaining hairline crack. The cowrie shells around her neck, completely still in the morning air. The girl in white stood several paces away, watching. Adaeze sat in the red earth in front of Mama Ngozi. Not on a stool, not at a respectful distance. On the ground, cross-legged, close. Her denim shorts in the red dust. Her gold chains hanging forward. She looked at the old woman. "What else?" she asked. Simply. No preamble. Mama Ngozi regarded her with those milky, amber-ringed eyes. The morning birds in the mango tree above them. The village sounds beginning in the distance. Then the keeper said, "Nothing else from you. You have given what was required and more." A pause. "The last crack does not belong to you. It belongs to him." Adaeze understood. "My father." The confession was public. The return was made. But there is one thing a man must do privately that he cannot do in front of a crowd. Mama Ngozi's voice was patient and unhurried as always. He must apologize to me directly. Not to the village. Not to the covenant. To me. Ngozi. The woman he deceived. The woman who trusted him. Her ancient eyes found Adaeze. Not as a keeper. As a person. Adaeze stood. I will bring him. Chief Bartholomew Okonkwo was at Emeka's house, where he had slept on a borrowed mat on the floor without complaint, which was, Adaeze thought, its own kind of evidence that he had changed, or was changing, or was at least trying to be the man the change required. He was already awake when she arrived, already dressed, standing at Emeka's kitchen window with a cup of tea and the expression of a man who has been awake since 4 a.m. rehearsing something. She wants to speak to you alone, Adaeze said. Not as the keeper. As Ngozi. He set the tea down. He did not ask what he should say. A man who needs to be told what to say in an apology has not yet arrived at the apology. He simply nodded and walked out the door, and Adaeze watched him cross the village toward the mango tree and felt something she had not expected to feel for him today. Pride. Not the uncomplicated pride of a daughter for a father who has not yet failed her. The more honest, more expensive pride of a daughter for a father who failed her, saw it clearly, and chose not to stop at the seeing. She did not follow him to the tree. That was not hers to witness. She stood in Emeka's compound in the morning light and waited. Chisholm appeared beside her yellow hoodie, auburn bob, a chin-chin biscuit in her hand, because Chisholm processed every human emotion through food, and they stood together in the compound watching nothing in particular, waiting for the thing they could not see. 7 minutes passed. They both looked toward the tree. From the well, the elder woman from the day before appeared at the mouth of the square. She stood there, looking at them. And then, slowly, deliberately, she smiled the specific smile of someone bearing news that is also a gift, and she simply pointed down into the well. The water was running. Clear, cold, full. It had been running since the crack began to close. But now the sound of it had changed. Not the thin, cautious trickle of a covenant half-honored. The full, open, generous sound of water that has been freed. Emeka came out of his house behind them. He had heard it too. He stood beside Adaeze, and they all three listened to the sound of the well, which was the sound of a village being given back to itself. Is it done? Chisholm asked, quietly, to no one specific. From across the square, Chief Okonkwo appeared, walking back from the mango tree. His burgundy agbada from yesterday, now slightly crumpled with the night and the morning. His face. The face of a man who has completed the last expensive thing on a long list of expensive things. Not happy, not yet, but unburdened in a way that had not been true of him for 20 years. He walked like a man whose back no longer hurts, moving through the absence of pain the way people do when they have forgotten what it felt like not to carry something. Behind him, at the mango tree, Mama Ngozi was no longer visible. The twin vessel, the cracked one, sat alone at the base of the tree on the red earth. Whole. Not a mark on it. The crack entirely gone. The clay surface smooth and unbroken as if it had never fractured at all. The morning light on the ancient patterns perfect, continuous, complete. And then Adaeze's phone buzzed. She looked at it with the specific wariness of someone who has learned that her phone is not a neutral object in this story. The notification was from YouTube, a platform message. She opened it. It read, "Your account has been restored following a platform review. Content flagged for review has been reinstated. We apologize for any disruption to your channel." Her channel, the original one. 340,000 subscribers. Every video. Restored. But the backup account, the one she had deleted herself, was still gone. That had been her choice. The covenant had only taken what it required. Her sacrifice remained her sacrifice. The distinction mattered. The restored channel had notifications waiting. During the days it had been down, people had been searching for it. Her numbers had grown in her absence. When people cannot find something, they want it more. She had 510,000 subscribers now, and the most viewed video on her entire channel pinned to the top. Somehow, by an algorithm that occasionally gets something right, was not a stunt, not a prank, not hot water on anyone. It was a 2-minute and 11-second video of a young woman with messy braids telling the truth about something she had done wrong, with no ring light, no music, no performance. In a compound in the early morning after a night she would never forget. Adaeze stared at the screen for a long time. Then she looked up, at Emeka beside her, his copper bracelet catching the morning light, his steady eyes, his quiet smile small, held back, her dimples in full bloom. trying extremely hard not to shriek with excitement out of respect for the sacred gravity of the moment. Adaeze pocketed her phone. She looked at Emeka. I said, ask me when it's over, she said. It's over, he said. Yes, she said. It is. She did not clarify which question she was answering. She did not need to. He knew. Chisholm knew. The red earth knew. The well knew. The morning continued. Umuoha continued. The sun climbed, and the village went about its life, market stalls opening, children running, the ordinary irreplaceable texture of a community intact and fed by its own water, rooted in its own beginning. And Adaeze Okonkwo, 22 years old, with 510,000 subscribers and a deleted backup account and red acrylic nails, and a father who was trying, and a man who had always been beside her, and a best friend who was now making the kind of sound only Chisholm could make when something wonderful happened, took out her phone, opened her camera, and recorded 30 seconds of the well running clear in the morning light. No caption, no hook, no my people, good morning, oh. Just the sound of water, and the light, and the village alive around it. She posted it. By evening, it had 3 million views. And in the comments, the very first one, posted from an account that did not exist the following morning, with a username no one had searched for, were 4 words. Well done, my daughter.